A quiet coastal town settles into the evening. Snow gently rests on the rooftops, and porch lights glow softly against the winter dusk. Inside warm homes, families finish dinner, children laugh, and everyday life continues without fear. In one house on Summer Street in Duxbury, Massachusetts, three young children were alive. Minutes later, they would not be. Their mother, Lindsay Clancy, a nurse and caregiver, was a woman trained to bring life into the world. So what happened inside that house? Was it an act of deliberate violence or the collapse of a mind in crisis? How could a night that began like any other end in unimaginable tragedy? This is Murder Vault Chronicles. This is the story of Lindsay Clancy. Duxbury is the kind of town where people choose to raise families for safety and peace. Historic homes line quiet streets. Neighbors know one another. Children ride bikes down tree-lined cul-de-sacs. The Clancy family embodied that ideal life. Patrick Clancy worked in finance and technology. Lindsay Clancy was a labor and delivery nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital, one of the most respected medical institutions in the country. Every day, she helped bring new life into the world. Together, they were raising three young children, 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and 8-month-old Callan. Friends described Lindsay as devoted, attentive, and deeply loving toward her children. Family outings, smiles, and the quiet moments of everyday joy. But behind the scenes, Lindsay was struggling. After the birth of her third child, Callan, those close to her began to notice changes in her behavior. What started as exhaustion soon escalated into anxiety, which then deepened into depression. Sleep became difficult to achieve, and her thoughts grew darker. Medical professionals prescribed various medications to address her postpartum depression and anxiety. Adjustments were made to her treatment plan, including dosage changes and the addition of new prescriptions. According to her husband, Lindsay expressed fears that she might harm herself and at times voiced concerns about her children's safety. Despite receiving treatment, her struggles persisted. Friends observed a woman struggling to maintain her composure, while doctors recognized a patient in distress. The family held on to hope that the worst would eventually pass. No one could have anticipated what was about to happen. On the evening of January 24th, 2023, winter had firmly settled over Duxbury. It was cold and quiet. Inside the Clancy home, the children were winding down for the night. At some point that evening, Patrick Clancy briefly left the house to pick up takeout food, which prosecutors later claimed Lindsay encouraged. She remained at home alone with the children. What happened next would shock the nation. Investigators alleged that Lindsay strangled the children using exercise resistance bands. When Patrick returned home, he walked into a nightmare. His children were unresponsive, and his wife was nowhere to be found. Outside the home, below a second-story window, Lindsay lay critically injured after an apparent suicide attempt. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, and all four were transported to the hospital. 5-year-old Cora and 3-year-old Dawson were pronounced dead, while baby Callan fought for his life but succumbed to his injuries days later. Lindsay survived the fall, but it left her paralyzed from the waist down. As news spread, disbelief rippled through the community. A mother who was a nurse and a caregiver was accused of killing her own children. Duxbury gathered in grief, holding vigils, placing flowers and stuffed animals outside the Clancy home. Neighbors struggled to reconcile the woman they knew with the horror that had unfolded. Friends remembered her kindness, co-workers spoke of her compassion, and community members recalled happy moments and playdates. Across the country, one question echoed again and again. How could this happen? Authorities charged Lindsay Clancy with 3 counts of murder, as well as charges of strangulation and assault. Prosecutors argued the killings were deliberate. They alleged planning and intent, pointing to the timeline and the fact that she was alone with the children when the attack occurred. But the defense presents a starkly different narrative. Her attorneys argue that Lindsay had severe postpartum mental illness, possibly postpartum psychosis, a rare but devastating condition that can include hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, and a break from reality. They claim medication changes and misdiagnosis may have worsened her condition. Her husband later filed a lawsuit alleging negligent medical care contributed to the tragedy. In a statement that stunned many, he publicly expressed forgiveness, toward his wife while mourning the loss of their children. The case has ignited a national conversation about maternal mental health, psychiatric medications, and how society recognizes and treats postpartum disorders. Medical experts note that postpartum psychosis is rare but severe, requiring immediate treatment and supervision. Advocates argue that greater awareness and support systems are urgently needed. Meanwhile, prosecutors maintain that Lindsay understood her actions and must be held criminally responsible. Today, Lindsay Clancy remains hospitalized and under medical supervision. She is paralyzed and continues to receive treatment. Her defense team is expected to pursue an insanity defense at trial. That trial is scheduled for 2026. The courtroom will determine legal responsibility. But for many, the deeper questions extend beyond any verdict. 3 children are gone. A family is shattered. A community is forever changed. Was this an act of calculated violence, or the tragic collapse of a mind in crisis? For those searching for answers, the truth may never feel complete. What remains is grief, complexity, and a sobering reminder that mental illness can exist quietly behind even the most ordinary doors. This tragedy left an imprint far beyond one home in a small Massachusetts town. It forced a nation to confront uncomfortable questions about motherhood, mental health, and the fragile line between wellness and crisis. And it left behind a silence where 3 young voices once lived. This has been Murder Vault Chronicles. Please like and subscribe to the channel.